Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Happy to be back. Feeling a little less than today. That's okay. We're going to get through the next 3 hours together. I appreciate Lucas and Bert bailing me out on I didn't expect anybody to respond to me at 1:30 in the morning when I was dealing with a little bit of a stomach situation. But you guys did bail me out in short order, and it sounds like you had a fun show yesterday.
Keep selling it, bud. Keep selling it. You're doing a great job.
Keep selling what?
The food poisoning thing. You're doing good. Keep going.
I did.
Woke up at 1:30, hugging the toilet, a stomach situation. You're hitting all the right notes.
I texted you at 1:30.
I mean, that's commitment. That's commitment to getting bailed out for a day, is setting your alarm for 1:30, texting, oh, God, I feel terrible, and then going back to sleep.
Well, either
I tip
way,
my cap.
So what were you guys guessing about what I was actually doing, where I was? I got tweets saying that I was spotted at NBA like the COVID Titans a couple of years ago.
Well, what you don't have is benefit of the doubt. I'll tell you that.
Why not? Why the hell wouldn't I have benefit of the doubt on sick days? Brother, you can't get me to take a day off. That's the whole thing.
I couldn't get you to leave your house on Monday.
So Monday is where all the benefit, it just takes one. It's what have you done for me lately? Monday, because I wasn't smart enough to get my car out early before the snow hit. By the way, hope everybody's safe and sound driving around, or hopefully not driving around. Conditions are slick getting to work. But, I think I deserve all the benefit of the doubt in the world. You're full of bleep.
You can tell yourself that.
I'm going to. That's the plan. What'd you guys do?
Dave Lapham was fantastic of the In the Trenches podcast, also the Bengals radio analyst, providing some perspective on Brian Callahan, Titans coaching candidate, preview the NFL divisional round. Bert suffering from a severe bout of BRS. He's very scared.
Good.
About the Texans. Another AFC South team coming in to ruin his one seed and MVP season.
Good. I like that. I like him scared. Nobody was rooting harder for me to be sick yesterday than Bert, because he got a night off primetime, which I'm sure he delighted in. I'm sure he was very quick to volunteer his services for 3 more hours here, so he didn't have to deal with me at 8 p.m. last night. And that's that. So his BRS, not battered Robert syndrome, but battered Raven syndrome.
I think so. Either that or BBS, battered Baltimore syndrome. But BRS, yeah, I think we'll settle with that.
Okay. Well, there is fun. I mean, this hopefully is going to be the best weekend of football that we have, because the wild card round, I don't want to say disappointed.
It disappointed.
It's not too dramatic to say it was disappointing, because
it was disappointing.
Just how lopsided so many of the games were. And I know Green Bay and Dallas kind of got closer there at the end, but really for the most part, it was just Detroit and the Rams that was the most compelling game, the most like quarter 1 through quarter 4 most engaging game that we had. So I'm hoping for better results in the divisional round. And while we get ready for another fun weekend of football, there was a bunch of stuff that came out yesterday. You guys were probably off the air by the time that news came out of Vrabel being in Los Angeles interviewing for the Chargers job.
We were just off the air.
And then there's David Shaw, speaking of California, the former Stanford coach who's been taking time away to do TV. He interviewed for the Chargers job yesterday, and then will interview for the Titans job, reportedly, according to Adam Schefter, I think is the first who had this morning. David Shaw will interview for the Titans job this weekend. So that's now 11 people that they have either requested or not brought in, but met with virtually before they can start to do these things in person on the 22nd. That's now the 11th candidate for this job. Now, you went through the NFL coaching tracker and determined that they were, in fact, not the team with the most requests for candidates.
Chargers have requested to talk to more. The Falcons have requested to talk to more. By my count, the Titans have requested the third most number of candidates. And that's, ever-changing throughout the course of this week. But they were not at the top of the list.
We're running out of time for people to, bring in new faces to this whole thing.
Look, I mean, the Chargers, you want to talk about casting a diverse net? That's the LA Chargers, and who they're talking to, from Jim Harbaugh to Mike Vrabel to everyone in between.
Well, I mean, it does kind of lend itself to what we were talking about with Steve Weish on Wednesday of the NFL Network, and Steve gave us some good background on Rand Carthon and how basically the way that he's come up through football is going to inform this coaching search. This was Steve on Wednesday. Don't have it yet?
We do not have that yet from Steve.
Oh, okay. What do we have?
From Steve?
Just generally.
Why don't we talk about it?
Okay. You let me know. But with that being said, the list of 11 includes guys like Thomas Brown, the offensive coordinator for the Panthers. Now, I got a text yesterday, Lucas, from one of our friends who listens to the radio show, saying, answer me this. How is anyone associated with the Carolina Panthers a candidate to replace Mike bleeping Vrabel? And he did not bleep. I feel like we've been fielding a lot of questions to this effect throughout the course of the week, whether it's, replacing Vrabel or to be a candidate to be a head coach in the NFL. Because there are a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different resumes of the 11, now including David Shaw, that will interview or have interviewed for this job. I think that's the right approach. I would like it even further. We talked about that with Belichick and Harbaugh, but I'm not going to get into reruns on that. That's the list that they've put together, and we'll see how many of these guys get asked back for second interviews. Right now, the only one that's been reported is Brian Callahan, the Bengals offensive coordinator. And to hear Lucas tell it, Dave Lapham kind of talked a bunch of you into Brian Callahan yesterday. Is that the case?
I think people are coming around on Callahan. There's a certain thing about every candidate that I think will turn people off, whether it's defensive mind. In the case of Thomas Brown, it's any association with the Carolina Panthers. And in the case of a guy like Brian Callahan, he's not the primary play caller on game day. So Dave did a good job of sort of breaking down that dynamic and how much of Callahan's fingerprints are on the game plan week to week and how much constant communication there is between he and Zach Taylor on game day as well, where he's not just sitting in the booth kind of with his hands in his lap with a free ticket to the game, right? He's very involved in what they do offensively and what they did with Jake Browning and the way that they were able to keep their season afloat with Browning at quarterback after Burrow went down.
F&M Bank chat is also there at your disposal. You can call in. 615-737-1045 is the number. We'll have Coach Mack to talk about the divisional round at 11:20 today. Somebody, Idiot Garage on YouTube, is asking any info on in-house candidates. They've not interviewed anybody in-house. It doesn't sound like they plan to, or if the question is about in-house candidates, well, it wouldn't be in-house candidates, but like people interviewing elsewhere. There's a bunch of Titans assistants and Titans position coaches and stuff like that who are interviewing elsewhere while they try and figure out their head coaching situation here. And remember,
not for head coaching opportunities.
Not for head coaching opportunities, for coordinator jobs, for other position coaches trying to move up the ranks, basically, or even make lateral moves to places that they feel a little bit more secure, because this is not, as they try and figure their situation out, there's a lot that's just kind of left in the lurch that is probably not a great feeling if you're currently under contract with the Tennessee Titans, although they're allowed to interview in ways that they're not getting blocked for job interviews the way that David Tepper was doing with Carolina. There was an interesting note that I saw yesterday. I don't know if you guys talked about it at all. Terrell Williams, the defensive line coach here, is going to be one of the head coaches for the Senior Bowl coming up. That caught my attention, Lucas, because that was the first statement that I've seen Mike Vrabel make. Mike Vrabel was quoted in the Senior Bowl announcement of the coaching staffs for the American team and the national team, and that's coming up in just, 2 weeks away from Senior Bowl. Mike Vrabel, who put Terrell Williams in a position to be a head coach for a preseason game and kind of, furthering his own opportunities in a different way than a lot of people have gone about it, and now getting him further opportunities, or having kind of brought him to the fore for other opportunities that he might have, like this one with the Senior Bowl, where you'll be around a lot of agents, you'll be around a lot of general managers, a lot of coaches from a lot of different staffs. So that is something to keep an eye on. I don't know how many people are going to end up staying here. I imagine there'll be a couple of holdovers from the previous staff, but until we have more concrete of feeling about their direction, I think that's kind of tough to say right now, too. I mean, nobody there would be able to answer that right now without a head coach in place.
I mean, if you're hiring a QB-driven head coach, what are the odds that Charles London sticks around, right? If that coach wants to bring in his people and his offense and get his hands on Will Levis. Or maybe, I mean, it's so case by case that it's hard to sit here and project which candidates have a shot of sticking around.
No, but that's a good hypothetical because Charles London is somebody who was talked about for coordinator jobs before he became the QB coach here. Who's to say that he wouldn't have a coordinator job here with the new coaching staff, given that he was brought in a different situation. It was a Mike Vrabel hire with an expanded coaching staff with more opportunities to move guys into different roles and to add different pass game coordinators and run game analysts and things like that to expand what they're doing. Now, ultimately, it didn't have the results that they wanted it to, but still, something to keep an eye on. How the rest of the NFL views the Titans' job. Mike Sando of The Athletic went about ranking the openings throughout the NFL. You'll be surprised to see where the Titans' job lands. We'll tell you coming up next. Is this for the ice or is this for the collaboration? I don't know. I didn't know what you were trying to do there.
I didn't think about the collaboration part, but let's do that. Let's
okay.
go with that.
How about it? Welcome back to the show. Hope everybody is safe and warm on this Friday. Thanks for hanging out with us. How the rest of the NFL views this particular job opening that Mike Vrabel left vacant. We'll talk about where he's interviewing a little later on. Coach Mack will join us in the second hour as well. Get his thoughts. I'd be curious to know, do you think Mack is going to be, I mean, there's only, we'll ask him, but like, I wonder how much he'd be willing to get into how he views some of these job openings around the league. Being a former head coach, talking to a lot of coaches still as a part of his job, and having connections around the league the way that somebody who's spent damn near 40 years in the league would be able to do. I'd be curious to get Mack's feedback on that. So we'll do that as well as a little divisional round stuff with him at 11:20 today.
It is funny. You get all these opinions about which job is better than what, and we all sort of have our own criteria for what makes a certain job better than another. And the only person we haven't talked to about that is a coach. So I would be fascinated to see what a former NFL head coach thinks about the way these jobs stack up against one another.
Has anybody else asked him? Like, I don't want to act like we've stumbled upon something groundbreaking here. That the best way to talk about coach job openings is to ask a coach, perhaps. So I don't know if
groundbreaking stuff.
I don't know if Mack's been asked, but by God, we'll trailblaze at 11:20 today. The Athletic, though, did take it upon themselves, Mike Sando, who's one of their national reporters, to talk to a lot of people around the league and to put together his criteria for how these jobs stack up. So 1 to 8 for these openings, including the Patriots were included in here because they did change coaches, even though they've already filled that job. Where, I guess, before we dive in here, was there any that was a surprise beyond the Titans as to where Sando ranked it based on you and I doing this exercise, last week?
Well, you and I were unanimous on what we thought the number one job was. Do you remember what that was?
Washington.
For Sando, that was number 6 out of 8.
Okay.
He says about Washington that it is an exciting day with the new owner driving a franchise reset following more than 2 decades of the embarrassment that was the Dan Snyder era. He said, that said, a first-time NFL owner has hired a first-time GM, so there will be a learning curve that could give the team a better shot at success down the line compared to right away. There is greater uncertainty in the meantime. The next coach will inherit the second pick in the draft, so there's the opportunity to add a quarterback. That obviously makes it more appealing. He brings up the division, though, as well, and the strength of the NFC East, especially with Philly and Dallas.
I did think it was funny the amount of people making jokes about Belichick interviewing for the Falcons and having a follow-up with the Falcons, by the way. Apparently the first one was just with Arthur Blank, and now this is going to include Terry Fontenot, that he was so unaccustomed to the AFC East being competitive that he has to go to another division where it's a little less competitive. Maybe he can slant things in his favor again, because for the longest, the Dolphins, the Bills, and the Jets were just filler for everything else that the Patriots were doing for 20 years. It was the easiest division in football, not just because they were great, but because those 3 teams were awful.
Wasn't that long ago.
Right. So Belichick fears competition.
Well,
somebody's going to write that.
The thing that Mike Sando holds, it seems, in really high regard is ownership. He comes back to ownership in his little blurb on the criteria why these teams are ranked where they're ranked for him.
Which is interesting because that is something that he's very much holding against the Tennessee Titans. So of 8 teams that made a change with their coach, including the Patriots, Sando ranks the Titans 7th, above only Carolina. Now, I'm going to read Carolina's first before I read the Titans blurb. The next coach in Carolina must manage an impulsive owner while also creating a successful offense around an outlier quarterback whose confidence could need rebuilding after a brutal rookie season. Okay, so that's very, very bleak. It is safe to understand why the Panthers' job is the worst job. So, in context of the Titans, When the Titans fired GM John Robinson late in the 2022 season, it looked like a potential power play by then coach Mike Vrabel. In retrospect, that wasn't the case. Vrabel suffered a similar fate a year later. Owner Amy Adams Strunk was the common denominator. The next coach needs to investigate what went wrong in Tennessee, where Vrabel was cruising along as a top coach, then suddenly couldn't win. He says that the roster needs a reset, which of course we all know. That the franchise needs a quarterback seems to be a bit of a common theme outside of Tennessee. Have you noticed that in a lot of the dialogue and discourse around the Titans job? People are talking about Will Levis as a pretty significant unknown. By the way, I'm not pushing back on that too much because there's a lot there that's, I think, left to be desired. But I think everybody around here was in agreement that he's good enough to build around in the interim.
Well, the question around that is how do Amy and Rand feel about it? And the decision makers in this search, if a head coach is laying out his plan for the Titans, sitting with Amy and Titans brass and whoever's in the room, and it does not include Will Levis, or it's, hey, I'm going to give Levis a shot, but I don't want to be kept under Will Levis. I want to be able to get out from under him if I don't think he's my guy. Or are they is that a deal breaker for them?
It wasn't last time around with Malik, right? And Malik is a different.
Yeah, no, totally different. I mean, I think.
Well,
how much of these conversations?
At the time, Lucas, not at the time, totally different. The idea of just immediately that the next person that was going to come in here for John was going to be able to draft a quarterback. I think a lot of people understood that it was the correct decision to go in, but I don't think it's as obvious as we're making it right now in retrospect.
Well, I just wonder what percentage of these conversations are about Levis with these candidates. I know there's a lot of ground to cover, but how much of it is, this is our young quarterback of the future. What are you going to do with him?
If he was good enough to make the statement, then it's fair to expect the statement from Amy Adams Strunk in, the exciting young quarterback and the need for the approach to evolve kind of stuff, like that he was not mentioned by name, but was mentioned in her statement,
right,
announcing the firing of Mike Vrabel. It is safe to assume that she also views him as their answer at quarterback.
Like if a coach is coming in and saying, let me get my guy, let's use that number 7 pick, let's use some capital, let's move up, let's go get Jaden Daniels.
You could.
Are they hearing that out, or are they saying, no, Levis is our guy. You either make it work or you don't. And if that's not going to be your plan, then we're going to look elsewhere.
We don't have the answer to that question definitively.
Sando doesn't name Levis in this.
Who did they have on the morning show that
Randy Mueller, who
the former general manager,
who co-hosts a podcast with Mike Sando for The Athletic, who just said, Levis is your franchise quarterback. You don't know that yet. You don't 100% know that yet.
I think that's fair.
I think it's fair too.
Because I don't want to get into an exercise about what defines a franchise quarterback, but are we talking about a situation? Is he closer to Kenny Pickett or Lamar Jackson? Right? Let's use those as the two examples of guy, and I know they're in the same division, but Kenny Pickett is probably, he's going to be a quarterback in the NFL, but he's probably not the Steelers' long-term solution. Mike Tomlin apparently is going to be given an extension. I don't know if you guys talked about that yesterday, according to Art Rooney Jr., the owner of the Steelers, that Pickett would be the starting quarterback coming into camp next year, but they're definitely going to draft or they're going to bring in competition, whatever the competition looks like. Kenny Pickett is not going to be somebody who gets a second, a super lucrative deal from the Pittsburgh Steelers on a second contract. I know we're probably a couple years away from that. Tua is probably the middle ground where you have a lot of questions. He's due a contract. Herbert has already been paid. Los Angeles has told you there's no question about it. That's our guy. And then Lamar, who maybe is not a good example to use because there were questions about whether Baltimore was 100% certain that he was their guy, and other franchises were actively coming out and saying, no, we're good on Lamar Jackson. I just mean, where is Will Levis on the spectrum of that dude is for sure going to see a second contract? That's the 8 to 10 year future of the franchise versus all right, Ritter, Pickett, we drafted a guy. That's probably not it. Let's keep looking because you don't need to be married to these dudes the same way that you have been for the last 20 years of football.
Like with Ritter going into this past season, it was, okay, I guess we'll find out this year. Nobody was going to look around in Atlanta and say, Desmond Ritter is our guy. He's our franchise quarterback. He is the starter this year. That doesn't make him the franchise quarterback. Obviously, Desmond Ritter is not the future in Atlanta. So where does Will Levis stand on that spectrum in the eyes of Titans brass?
The answer is too early, right? Where Goff and Wentz are dudes that got huge second deals, but then, they very quickly look like terrible mistakes by their respective organizations. One was able to salvage it. The other was not. So the geography of this and who they land with, their surroundings matter so much more. I don't want to say that they matter so much more than they do, but especially for quarterbacks, the surroundings are so important to their success or failure beyond just their individual talent.
Well, the main reason Sando ranks the Titans second to last in this ranking, you're right, he does not mention Will Levis at all. In fact, he says the franchise needs a quarterback. But he does say the new coach inherits an unproven GM in Rand Carthon, which could be good or bad. It's difficult to know. Throw in the ownership question marks, and this job looks less appealing. He says the next coach needs to investigate what went wrong in Tennessee, where Vrabel was cruising along as a top coach and then suddenly couldn't win.
Right. So that's the summary of it, is that there's a lot of question marks. People don't seem to have the answers. We talked about this, what was that, Wednesday? I think when you and I had the discussion about what's been the biggest swing and miss of Amy Adams Strunk tenure as controlling owner, and I made the argument that it was probably firing Vrabel too late if she wanted this kind of a sweeping change, that maybe the best decision would have been not to try and make it work with an incumbent head coach and a general manager that incumbent head coach wasn't 100% sold on, but to just try and start anew in the best way possible and clean sweep it. So the idea of the unknown, all right, fair or unfair, let's just take this in two parts. An unproven GM in Rand Carthon, is that a fair characterization of what we're looking at here in Tennessee? After 1 year of Rand Carthon, I think it's fair. We don't know how much we don't know how much he did versus how much Vrabel took control of. And we have an idea of the way that he's going to approach this, but only in theory, because we haven't seen it put into practice yet. Here's Steve Wyche of the NFL Network, who was kind of detailing the way that Rand Carthon's background would inform this Titans coaching search.
I've known Rand even when he left Atlanta to go to the St. Louis Rams, then the Los Angeles Rams, and then the 49ers. We've always had a very good relationship. And the one thing that has been a constant is he's someone who is aware of what he doesn't know. And he will rely on, and this is where I think he's going to be great during this coaching search, he will rely on very astute people to help him. He is one of the best relationship builders in the NFL, in that realm, in terms of the personnel department. He's got Les Snead, the general manager of the Rams, Ray Agnew and Brad Holmes, who he worked with the Rams. Holmes is now the GM of the Lions. Agnew's the assistant GM. Adam Peters with the Niners, of course, who's now the general manager with the Commanders. John Lynch, the general manager. These are all of these guys have different ways that they approach things. Brad Holmes and Ray Agnew are the football guys. Les Snead's an analytics guy. Adam Peters is kind of a CEO type, as is John Lynch. And I think that's where he's merging a lot of this. And him not being available, I think, is very strategic and very right, because this is Mike Vrabel's team. He is being interjected into a foundation that was already established. So, the head coach is the one voice. That's how it should be. He shouldn't, come in and try and make himself available and Bigfoot anybody who's been here before him. So I think that was, well designed by whomever came up with that strategy. But again, in terms of what he does, he doesn't just, we in the media and we as fans like to say, wow, this guy was a great college player, or this guy was an excellent coach here. He has, again, that antenna from learning from the right people, of finding the right people to put in the building who meet the existing roster, or the roster that they want to have, or the culture that they want to have. And that is hugely important, because you can put a great player into a roster that is aging and he's not going to thrive, or to a roster that is too young and there's a lot of hurdles to overcome. You've got to be able to find the right fit for all of that. He's been part of organizations clearly that have done that successfully and sustaining it for years. But again, also, he's one of these guys, man. He's got a DNA in him. You know, as a player, he had to fight to stay in the league for a couple of years. You know, to kind of step out of his father, Mo Carthon's shadow, the great running back for the Giants. He had to fight to step out of that shadow. And he seems to always have that kind of Rocky mentality that I've got to fight to overcome no matter what.
That's Steve Weich with us on Wednesday. You can check out that full interview. It was really informative. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Ryan is in Gallatin next.
So I don't think it's as big a question about Will Levis as people think. Our offense looked the best with Will Levis, and Ryan Tannehill is a starter in this league and has won a lot of games. Picture them not giving Malik all those reps during training camp, him not getting hurt, and someone investing in him. I think he's a starter in this league, minimum.
Appreciate the call, Ryan. We kind of categorized it this season as he looks like he belongs. That's a thing that you've heard us say a couple of times, and that sounds like it's also Ryan's assessment, where you're watching Tannehill. You understand that Tannehill is not the best version of himself. He's also in a bad situation. He's going to be a starting quarterback somewhere for a period of time, if not an entire season next year, right? Ryan Tannehill is going to be given the opportunity to start in some form or fashion in 2024. Will Levis was a better version of the quarterback that they brought in to kind of elevate the offense. He did so. He was not able to elevate it more than it was there to kind of undermine him, right? Like, there's a lot of things that he was working uphill against that have to be accounted for. But to kind of bring back some of Lucas's draft analysis, what did you say about Will Levis that you didn't like?
My biggest concern coming out was that his best tape and his best performances only came when everything around him was good. But he refuted he pushed back on some of those things last season.
Sure.
Where the situation wasn't any better for Levis against Atlanta than it was for Tannehill in London or in New Orleans or any of those prior 6 or 7 games, whatever it was. And Levis did put out the best offensive output the Titans saw all season.
Difference between Levis' senior season and his rookie year in the NFL is he was a little healthier.
Yeah.
A little healthier there, so there was some of that, and, managed the ankle injury, 2 ankle injuries.
DeAndre Hopkins helps.
DeAndre Hopkins also does help. He's a little better. Who was the guy that went to the Giants? Kadarius Toney, who is now
at the Chiefs, dropping balls for the Chiefs now.
Right, but that's who was drafted in the 3rd round out of Kentucky, right?
No.
Who am I thinking?
Tony was a first-rounder out of Florida. You are thinking of, Levis is not Wan'Dale Robinson.
Wan'Dale Robinson. DeAndre Hopkins a little better than Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yes. Barryon Brown was basically Will Levis's best weapon his senior year. Who's a good player, fun player, Nashville native, but a true freshman track star. That was Levis's best option his senior year at Kentucky.
Is 7 fair? If you're 7 out of 8, does that seem fair? If you're looking at this from outside in on all 8 jobs from a 1,000-foot view, are we too close to it to think that the Titans job should be more appealing than the 7th ranked job in the NFL, according to Mike Sando?
Well, where did we rank the Titans? Do you remember?
No lower than 3rd between the
second.
Two of us.
We ranked them 2nd behind Washington as the most appealing landing spot, taking into account the money they have to work with, top 10 draft pick, a quarterback in place, some pieces on both sides of the ball to work around. But Mike Sando is looking at ownership as his biggest factor here. And that's why he has the Titans second to last.
Okay. Again, I ask you, is that fair? Because of the ownership thing. Giardi, he doesn't sound any different than Giardi did when he came on here and said Amy Adams Strunk is teetering on being one of the worst owners in football.
I'm going to say no because it still is giving off the national looking at Tennessee saying, what in the world are you doing when you fired Mike Vrabel, without a lot of the nuance that goes into what transpired between Vrabel and the Titans.
Brandon Rushing says that there's an article on Yahoo that polled execs had them ranked 7th too. That's why I think it's important context. I think a lot of times because we are here every day, we can give you better context than some of these people who are not. But there's also a part of that gets you too close to the situation, and I think asks important questions like, are we underrating how skeptically the rest of the league, including these candidates, is going to be eyeing the Titans ownership group? 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. The SEC stat of the day, that's next.
Life is busy. We could all use some extra time in our day, which is exactly why Two Rivers Ford offers mobile service. We'll bring the service to your driveway at no additional charge. Oil changes, brakes, batteries, the certified technicians at Two Rivers will perform basic maintenance on your vehicle wherever you are, so you'll have more time for moments like this. Schedule your mobile service appointment by scanning the QR code or calling Two Rivers Ford today.
I don't know how many different players have entered the portal or decommitted from Alabama since the last time I was on the air on Wednesday. I had a sick day yesterday. Lucas and Bert did well to cover for me.
Why didn't I tell you?
Let's talk about SEC, baby. Let's talk about the SEC. Let's talk about Nick Saban and Josh Heupel in the SEC. Let's talk about SEC, baby. Let's talk about the SEC. Let's talk about Brian Kelly and Greg Sankey in the SEC. Let's talk about SEC.
30, Buck. 30
No.
is the answer to your question.
Oh, my God.
30 outgoing transfers from Alabama that are either in the transfer portal or reported to be entering the transfer portal, as is the case for Julian Sayin, the number one quarterback of the 2024 recruiting class. Pete Thamel reporting that Sayin is going to enter the portal officially today if he hasn't already. Now, worth saying, some of those are pre-Saban retirement, the likes of Tyler Buckner, who is transferring back to Notre Dame, not to play football, but to play lacrosse.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Seth McLaughlin, right, the center that had so many struggles all season long and in the college football playoff, entered the portal before that announcement came down. So there are a few that are pre-Saban, but overall, Alabama's roster is taking a massive hit. Out of those 30 outgoing players, by my count, 17 of them were top 150 players coming out of high school, according to 24/7 Sports. A lot of Bama fans are slamming their fist on the table. And to be honest, a lot of college football media that are not Alabama fans are saying this just can't happen. This is not fair to Kalen DeBoer. Something has to change for this rule to allow Alabama's roster to be completely gutted. I saw this from Josh Newberg of On3 Sports. He said, transfer portal needs to be fixed. The situation with Alabama will cause change. Alabama is penalized because they made the playoffs and Saban retired afterward. The last team to make a change gets shafted in the portal. There's simply no players left in the portal to recruit. Top available players are the ones hitting the portal from Alabama. If Saban had retired December 1st, this wouldn't be happening. It needs to be fixed. My question is, does an entire rule need to be changed because of this unique of a situation? How often are we going to get arguably the most talented roster on paper in the country losing their head coach at this stage in the offseason, and then that 30-day window opens up? It sucks for Bama fans. It really does. It sucks for Kalen DeBoer. But typically, what is the reason that a head coach is no longer at that university? Fired because of losing, because of lack of talent, because of a lot of things. And then that 30-day window opens up, and maybe there's one or two players that just didn't land in the right spot. They go find a new home. But it's not going to happen very often that a coach is going to take his team to the playoff and then bolt or retire in mid-January and leave that roster susceptible to being poached as one of the most talented rosters in the country. This is a very, very unique situation, so I do not see it as grounds to not allow these players to go play for someone else when they signed up to play for the greatest coach of all time. And Kalen DeBoer is a great football coach. His resume is incredible, what he's done with lesser talent at every stop he has made. And this is a huge, huge challenge for him. But I don't think we should be holding it against these players that signed up to play for Nick Saban. It's a very unique situation. Let's not go changing rules because of once-in-a-million type of situations.
So, to your point about the timeline is what everybody is hand-wringing about, right? Because this is not an issue where coaches are fired at the end of the season or in season in some cases, and an Alabama comes in and immediately poaches their roster of its best players, right? Or a Vanderbilt where they're not bowl eligible and their season just ends, and then all of a sudden the best players at Vandy are going to Alabama or Georgia or wherever the case may be. I think it's, as somebody who can be hyperbolic, I think it's a bit hyperbolic by people in college football media who are saying that that if you are demanding change for the transfer portal, I will hear you out. If you are demanding change for the transfer portal just in the last week and a half because Alabama's being ravaged, I'm less likely to take you seriously. It is a huge story. It is going to impact the landscape of college football for a year. It is going to put Alabama and Crimson Tide fans in a position that they have not had to be in the better part of 2 decades. It is going to put them at a disadvantage and also tough. I hate to be so blunt about it, but yeah, tough. As somebody,
welcome to the real world.
I just
right?
Yeah, it's not fair. I think it's so funny that, and it's not just Alabama fans, although we did have a 1 or 2 call in this week saying that what's happening to Alabama is entirely unfair and all that kind of stuff. But what are these media people talking about in the world of college football that would feel that this specific situation necessitates a sport-wide change? Come on.
We could still see this happen with Michigan if Jim Harbaugh leaves, and that's even further down the timeline where the portal will have been picked clean, Alabama's roster will have been picked clean, and there's still going to be teams with needs out there.
Sure.
And Harbaugh goes to the Chargers, and suddenly it's open season on Michigan's roster. It'd be interesting to see how that played out, depending on who Michigan hired, if they elevated Sharon Moore or whatever direction they went. But Michigan's roster still, on paper, is not as talented as what Alabama has.
Best of the best
in that building.
This is the best. This is the best edge rusher in the 2025 class decommitting. It's the best wide receivers entering the portal. It's like the top tier talent, the most pro likely talent anywhere in college football, arguably, other than Athens, Georgia, saying, yeah, okay, we're here for Saban, not for Alabama.
But them's the breaks.
Thank you, Boris.
Portal continues to portal. Tennessee reportedly is going to land Lance Hurd, the former 5-star prospect coming out of high school, offensive tackle transferring out of LSU. Looked like it was between Oklahoma and Tennessee. And if true, and when official, that fills a massive need for Tennessee for what they can accomplish this coming season with Nico Imaliava and what he has up front with John Campbell and Lance Hurd bookending that starting 5 of the offensive line. Cade Mays is coming back. Javonte Spraggins is coming back. You feel so much better about Tennessee's offensive line depth. There's still a lot to be desired there, but as far as the starting 5 is concerned, Lance Hurd, a critical addition if that does officially come to pass as it has been reported by On3 Sports. Very quickly, not SEC related, did you see that Bill O'Brien is going to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State?
I did see that on my deathbed yesterday.
I did have to bring up this stat from Will Brinson on Twitter that I did a triple take on. Bill O'Brien spent 8 total years working for either Bill Belichick, 07 to 11, and this past season, 2023, or Nick Saban, worked for Saban in 2021 and 2022, and did not win a Super Bowl or a national championship. He says that's got to be a club with a membership of 1. That is insane. Bill O'Brien spending almost a decade working for Bill and Saban combined.
That's so bad.
And their Patriots and Alabama tenures, dipping, ducking, diving, and dodging championships is as impressive a stat as I have seen this week.
Because he's in that weird Brady window where they were thought of as underperforming after the first 3 Super Bowls before they turned it back on for another 3. Bill O'Brien is in that weird window. Oh, my God. That's terrible. Imagine having that on your resume. We'll get to more of your phone calls in the second hour. Mike Vrabel gets his first interview and some other teams expressing interest. What is the best fit for the former Titans head coach? We'll talk about it next.
It is 11:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. On Thursday, the Titans completed their interview with Houston offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick and Carolina offensive coordinator Thomas Brown for the head coaching vacancy. Former Stanford head coach David Shaw is set to interview this weekend. That marks 11 coaches that have had an interview request from the Tennessee Titans. Former Titans coach Mike Vrabel completed his first interview on Thursday in L.A. with the Chargers. The Falcons and Seahawks also reportedly have interest in Vrabel. The Nashville Predators grabbed a West Coast win on Thursday night, 2-1 over the L.A. Kings to improve to 25-19-1. The Preds will visit Arizona tomorrow afternoon, a 2 p.m. puck drop. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What's happening on this Friday? Welcome in to hour number 2. We're happy to have you. Phone lines are available. Handful of phone lines available. 615-737-1045. We'll get back to the calls in just a moment. Coach Mack will be here in 20 minutes. Friday Fire right after that. Loaded second hour, as is always the case. So while I was out yesterday and Lucas and Bert helping me out on a sick day, there was a couple of news items that came and went, including the first round of interview, singular, not interviews, but interview for Mike Vrabel, the former Titans head coach, who completed an interview yesterday with the Los Angeles Chargers. They put that out on their social media accounts. There's, some information on the team website. It's not very expansive. But as we kind of get into this later phase and as we enter into the next phase of coaching searches and follow-up second interviews, things of the like, doing stuff in person after the 22nd, as the rules state, what's the best fit out of those three interests or teams interested in him that you just mentioned? One has done an interview with him, Los Angeles. 2 more that are interested in interviewing him, the Falcons and the Seahawks. Is there a fit for Mike Vrabel that makes the most sense out of those 3? I'm inclined to think, for all the different reasons that he made sense at the time for the Titans, that the job in Los Angeles would look very, very appealing.
Is that the best current roster of the 7 openings that are left? For 2024, a lot of expiring deals in L.A.
Yeah.
After this coming season, but for the upcoming season.
They're not very good deals. It's the best roster-wise. You could make an argument for Atlanta, but their defensive front is very bad.
The quarterback alone elevates it, right, over Atlanta, as far as what you already have in place.
But it's interesting to kind of think about LA's roster because Eckler is going to be out. Mike Williams.
1 year left.
I don't know what his dead money situation looks like, but the dude just does not stay out there.
Keenan Allen has 1 year left.
They're not exactly on solid ground the way that the 2019 Titans were, right? That was a team that was young, that was built to win, and was still very much working with rookie contracts and a veteran quarterback contract that was easier to work with because Miami was still paying, I think, $7 million of Ryan Tannehill's salary, which made it much easier to build around there. I kind of like the idea of Atlanta for as high up as they're picking.
Got to go get a quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, in a way too early stage of the process, what can you do with the 8th pick at quarterback? Could a quarterback fall to 8, or do you have to do some maneuvering?
Depends on what you think of Michael Penix.
Yeah, and the combine and the entire pre-draft process will color a lot of that.
or Jaden Daniels is a wild card in all of this. Because increasingly it's looking like he's going to be a first-round pick, it would seem at this point.
And so much depends on what the Bears do, who might be hiring Cliff Kingsbury as their OC.
I saw that. I'm inclined, because of the quarterback situation, I'm inclined to say that the Chargers makes the most sense for Vrabel. That would be an interesting game. Titans go to L.A. next year to play the Chargers. That would be compelling, to say the least. But their problems are so bad defensively. So bad defensively. I know Khalil Mack had a bunch of sacks this year. He might have finished just second or third behind T.J. Watt.
Also going into the final year of his deal.
Well, he had a game where he had, I think, 5 or 6 in one game last season that kind of inflated that. How much, so what are the questions if you're an NFL owner and general manager interviewing Mike Vrabel? What are the questions that you have? 1, do you want roster control, Mike? What is your level of interest, 1 to 10, in roster control?
What happened in Tennessee?
Yeah. How would you answer that if you're Mike Vrabel? Are you just going to pit it all on J-Rob and be like, did you see? Did you see what I was out there working with? Because you could. Did you see how I was able to defend or stay in a game on the road at Arrowhead against Patrick Mahomes, the guy who you're going to play twice a year? Did you see how I did that with Malik Willis? He's got a good record against the Chiefs, and that's the scariest part of taking the Chargers job, right? Is that you're going to be in that division that the Broncos, will see what they do at the quarterback position. They're moving on from Russell Wilson. Mahomes is obviously not going anywhere, and the Raiders are also in flux. So it's a pretty good time to be hitting the AFC West if you're coming in as a newcomer.
What's your plan for Justin Herbert, though? I mean, that's got to be 1A.
Who is he more appealing to? Chargers, Falcons, or Seahawks? Because I can't imagine you move Pete Carroll out of that role just to hire younger Pete Carroll. That's how I think of him. I know they're personality-wise different, but like philosophically, Pete Carroll and Mike Vrabel very much the same.
Why not?
They play the same style of defense. Why not?
Why not?
Well, Pete Carroll worked there. And if you vibe with him, if you're John Schneider, and John Schneider is an established general manager, a Super Bowl winning general manager, you would have more sway over a first-year GM coming in this nebulous collaborative role that Mike Vrabel is just going to run roughshod over, right?
What'd the Pats just do?
Well, the Pats promoted internally. What else are you looking for there?
Young Bill Belichick?
Yeah.
Which I guess would be Vrabel if it wasn't contractual that Gerard Mayo takes over in New England. Gerard Mayo I stumbled on a clip the other day of Tom Brady and Rodney Harrison and a couple other Patriots players talking about who's the guy on the roster that Bill turns to the most. And it's his son, Gerard. They called him Gerard Belichick in the clip. So when you say, do the Seahawks really want to leave Pete Carroll for a younger version of Pete Carroll? My mind goes straight to the Pats pushing out Bill Belichick for maybe a younger version of Bill Belichick.
That is so insane, though. 24 years with the same mindset, the same person, the same philosophy, and you don't even want to look. It's crazy to me, but listen, Robert Kraft has been hugely successful as an NFL owner. The Seahawks have been a largely, in this era of Seahawks football, they have been a largely successful organization. They have played in Super Bowls. They have won a Super Bowl. Should have won 2. But that's the thing. That should have won 2. You're looking to take the next step if you're the Seahawks. And Pete Carroll made arguably, he is the best coach in the history of the Seattle Seahawks. He is going to go into the Hall of Fame as the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks at whatever point in time Pete Carroll ends his football coaching career. And also, Pete Carroll was responsible for the worst play call in Super Bowl history that cost you a chance at 2. That has to be lingering somewhere in your mind if you're talking about a coach that has a certain philosophical approach. that you think might not lend itself to the best version of your football team, playing to your football team's strengths at the time would have been handing the ball to Marshawn Lynch at the 1 instead of throwing a pass for Malcolm Butler to pick off. Those are the kind of things I think about. Josh is in Nashville up next. Hey, Josh.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I'm kind of revisiting the conversation from the last segment about Alabama and their transfer woes. And while, now, they are the anomaly, given the greatness of Saban and all that. But you kind of look at trends both in college football and how they move sometimes into the NFL, but also the other way, trends in the NFL that move back into college football. And today we see all these top-tier coaches that are out there and this coaching carousel in the NFL as the patience of the NFL owners just gets, smaller and smaller. And you look in college football, and it's starting to trend that way also as the boosters, so much money involved, and the boosters have so much control over personnel and coaches and whatnot, that I wonder, I'm asking the question, while Alabama is the anomaly today, are we fast approaching a time where we could, in any given season, these top-tier coaches, they don't exactly live up to the expectations of the boosters, and then you just see this carousel. All it takes is one. So I guess the question is, today, maybe Alabama is the anomaly, but are we fast approaching a time when that's more common, and the rules may need to be changed accordingly? So
I appreciate the call. Well, here's the thing. Like, the anomaly is 17 years at an institution. Lucas, you'll correct me if I'm wrong here. Boosters and their level of patience with coaches has always been something. The only thing that keeps the cycle from continuing is the buyouts. The money being unmanageable, and even unmanageable money in the case of Jimbo Fisher, it'll only protect you from so much. I think it has so much less to do with the impact of the transfer portal as it does how much you can jumpstart a program with transfer portal and on NIL influences. That to me is the thing that has shortened the lifespan tenures of these coaches more than anything else. It's made it untenable for a lot of coaches. I know a lot of people look and listen, I don't know why Nick Saban I don't know what was the biggest factor in Nick Saban's decision to retire. I have seen a lot of people, particularly in our live stream chat, mentioning that Nick Saban just wasn't ready to compete with the playing field a little more level, like he isn't just continually in the college football playoff year in and year out.
Like he hasn't dominated every version of college football that we've seen over the last 2 to 3 decades. He was scared.
I find that notion a bit laughable. But it is he is the exception because you have to matter so much to last 17 years at a college football program, an SEC college football program. We're talking about them running out Jim Harbaugh not that long ago. Jim Harbaugh had to take a pay cut to keep his job at Michigan. That was, 2 years ago, Lucas?
No, that was 2020.
3?
Yeah.
Still.
COVID season.
We're not that far removed from that. So maybe it has all ramped up more in a way that I'm discounting, but I just think we already existed in that atmosphere, and that Saban and Alabama 17 years at an institution is always going to be the anomaly there. Coach Dave McGinnis at Titans Radio. He's going to talk some divisional round football with us coming up next.
So this is a small bird, too, for
That's
someone
right.
that's never seen a Bob White before. It's this little round softball.
That's right. Yeah, they're not much bigger than my fist. They've got little legs, but they're a ground-dwelling bird. If they never have to fly in their life, they wouldn't. Right? They just do that to get away from hawks and owls for the most part, or hunters. What they need is largely herbaceous plant communities. Right? So they need wildflowers. They need a small proportion of grasses. I don't need vast grasslands, right? I need stuff that most people would call weeds. Those are providing good brood cover, good nesting cover, a lot of insects, right? That's what chicks need to develop early.
Bridgestone Firestone is a quail focus
It
or
is.
focal area. So tell us a little bit why.
Yeah, it's largely because there are very few places that have wild quail in the state of Tennessee anymore. And there's dozens of different factors that lead into that, right? Everybody wants to jump right to predators, but it's a habitat issue, right? It's a landscape change, whether we're talking about development or whether we're talking about fire not being on the landscape anymore, or fields and young forests progressing into closed canopy forest, right? So the farm, just by nature of it being an open landscape that's been maintained that way, has held on to some birds. And compared to most other places in the state, we're one of the very few. On top of that, the potential for growing that population, it's higher here than just about anywhere else.
Welcome back. Friday, that music, it means Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio is joining us. He's presented by Two Rivers Ford. His visits across the station presented by Two Rivers Ford, powered by Ford, driven by people. Go online at tworiversford.com and shop how you like. Mac, I hope you're inside in the warmth of the Mac man cave, wading out this ice storm that we're dealing with around here.
No, I've been out. I've been out in my Two Rivers Ford vehicle. It works in this stuff.
Yeah.
I've been out. I had stuff. I've had stuff to do, and so if I was brand new to this type of weather, but I mean, my 10 years in Chicago, I had a pretty good lesson for 10 years in this stuff. First of all, you need a vehicle that works right, and then you need to be able to act right when you're out there. Just slow down. Just kind of double the time it takes you to get to destinations, and just slow down.
He's talking to you, Lucas. I hope you're paying attention right now.
Mine's built Ford tough too, man. We're good. My Ford Escape.
This is a Ford family show around here. Coach Mack made possible by Two Rivers Ford. Mac, the results of the wild card round, just in terms of entertainment value, disappointing. A lot of these games lopsided. Competitive. The most competitive one was Detroit and LA, and I know that you were obviously very much invested in that game for how much time you spent with the Rams organization, how many of the players and coaches you still know there, and obviously the storylines that were. How did that game live up to the hype for you from both a matchup standpoint and for what you wanted to see?
I did a thing on the OTP with Mike Keith, and he asked, in the course of that with Rhett Bryan and I, what game going into that round we were most looking forward to, just because of the storylines, and that was the one for me, because it was pretty compelling with both quarterbacks basically switching franchises, both number one draft pick quarterbacks, from both places, and then there's a big crossover in the front office there with Brad Holmes and Ray Agnew, who worked very closely with Rand Carthon when we all gathered up and went to the Rams in St. Louis, and then everybody moved to LA. And so, yeah, there was a lot to it. So that was the one that I was really pointed to and wanted to really watch, because I knew all the principals involved. And that was the best. I mean, as far as just the drama game that there was.
So with that being said, this is going to be a huge opportunity for Detroit to play in a championship game if they can just get past these pesky Buccaneers that seem to be causing everybody problems. The way that Dave Canales has got that offense up and humming, obviously they have talent. They've had talent there that's still there from when they won the Super Bowl back in the COVID season. But what he's done with Baker Mayfield, how much more Baker looks like he's playing out of the shotgun, Mac, how much more comfortable he looks in the shotgun, going back to his time with Lincoln Riley. Like that's been evident to me, at least just from an untrained eye watching them play these games.
Well, Baker Mayfield is a guy. First of all, you got to remember he was a number one draft pick, and guys get better at the quarterback position as they play in this league. Gardner Minshew's another great example of that. I mean, and that when we get ready to play those guys, Minshew up there, the things that I always talk about is the guy's a veteran dealer, and he understands how to work it. It takes a while at that position, especially to learn how to navigate the league and learn how to navigate a team. And clearly, I mean, he's doing a really good job. And yes, they've got talent. They've got talent that has managed mostly to stay healthy. They're playing really good defense up there right now, and it's going to be very, very interesting. I think Detroit has got a whole lot going for it, though, just because. And again, both of especially Detroit, just like Houston, and just like some of these teams that the uninitiated will say, well, what are they doing in the playoffs? What has happened? Well, what has happened is they've been bad for a pretty good period of time, but they've had high draft picks and they've hit on them. And then they've got, and so all of those things, and sooner or later, if you hit on enough of those draft picks and supplement it, with free agency and get the right coaching in there, I mean, you still got to have dudes in this league to win. And that's, they have them up there, but I love what Baker Mayfield's been doing, but it's not like he was an empty chair just showing up in this league.
The highlight probably of the weekend, at least I think that's what a lot of people are hoping for, is going to be the Chiefs at the Bills, a little bit of a twist on a game that we've seen a million times, except this one played at Highmark instead of at Arrowhead. It's the first road playoff game of Patrick Mahomes' career at 28 years old, having been drafted in the league in 2017. Buffalo's defense, Mac, is just a mash unit, but what McDermott has done there to kind of keep them afloat, keep that thing patchworked together, I don't know if they have a chance against Mahomes in that sense, but it's been the thing that's kind of given them life as much as the change that they've made with their offense and how, Josh Allen just simply not turning the ball over, it seems.
Yeah, well, you've got two quarterbacks there that are definitely, upper tier quarterbacks in this league. And the first thing that you talk about when you talk about a game up there that would come into the narrative to begin with is the weather. But neither one of those guys are fazed by it. Neither one of those teams are fazed by the weather up there. In fact, those the people in Buffalo revel in it. I mean, and it's going to be very interesting. And you're right. And of course, Sean McDermott, and the Buffalo Bills. What's been very interesting, Buck, I think, as all of us are now becoming accustomed to this 17-game season. You can have real dips in a 17-week season. Depending on just a level of play, depending on who's injured, who's coming back. And Buffalo took a dip for a while, but they had enough to be able to stay afloat. And the fact that everybody wants to talk about Mahomes now. This will be a real test. He's been in big time games, won Super Bowls, and a lot of it has been on favorable ground territory. People want to talk about that. Well, we're going to see, because I don't think either one of those teams are going to shy away from the weather part of it. It's just going to be very, very interesting to see, how Buffalo continues to respond, because as I talk about, they've been in the kind of a peak and valley type season. Well, they seem to be, pretty leveled off right now. So this is going to be a very, very good football game. And you're right. It's going to hinge on how defensively they're able to not stop because you're not going to stop them, but how they're able to contain Mahomes, and especially, this as well as I do, and so do your listeners, because they're sophisticated, football people. You've got to be able to stop Mahomes in these big games from the games the plays that are off schedule, especially with his legs. You just watch it and you just know at a time when it's coming up, when it's third and a bunch, that sooner or later he's going to pull it down and take off with it. So it's going to be very, very much fun to watch this.
Well, it's not just the thing that I love about the Chiefs, Mac, is it's not just Mahomes. Like, obviously he's the headliner, but that defense, Steve Spagnuolo, and some of these designs that they come up with, some of this late disguise, late rotation stuff that they're doing to cause some of the turnovers that they were against the Dolphins. He's been doing it for a long time. He's been doing it in Kansas City all year long, and the players are obviously executing at a high level. It's not like Steve Spagnuolo hasn't gotten enough credit for how good he's been across several different stops in his coaching career, but I feel like we still don't talk about him enough just because he is opposite Patrick Mahomes as a defensive coordinator.
Well, I think that's fair, but people in the business know how good Spags is and how good that defense is and what they do, and they've been really very solid and steady, all year. They've had some injuries at the linebacker position, but they've managed to keep it together. And you're right. Spags is not brand new to this, and so he will understand. That's why I say this will be a very, very interesting chess match between these two teams up there, I think.
Coach Dave McGinnis of Titans Radio hanging out here with us on 104.5 The Zone. His visit's presented by Two Rivers Ford. You can also check out Mac, as he mentioned, on the OTP, the official Titans podcast, TennesseeTitans.com, for all the great work that the Titans Radio crew does year-round. So speaking of the Titans, Mac, coaching search ongoing. This is one job of 7 that's still available, not counting the Patriots, who have already vacated and filled their head coaching role. How do you view a lot of these other spots in the league as a former head coach? I feel like we've done so much talking about, how the Falcons look and how people might view the Chargers. But as a former head coach and talking to so many people who are working in the league as coaches, how do you view these 7 openings?
Well, I mean, each one of them has their pluses and minuses, and that's what these interviews are for. I'm very fascinated by the way the interview process is going now in this day and age. With and they've tried to clean it up a lot, and I think the fact that we all lived in the COVID and the Zoom world for 2 years, in whatever business we were in, that now people are very comfortable doing business over Zoom, and so they incorporated that because it was hard for a while because before this you had to have an in-face meetings with the team you're with, and teams that are in the playoffs. That's hard to juggle as a coach that's in the playoffs, and because your time is very, very valuable. But if you get a chance to interview for a head job, you want to get in front of people. So anyway, now I think the system that they have that's why they can canvas so many more people with those initial Zoom meetings. All of these teams are canvassing a lot of people, which I think is beneficial. First of all, to anybody that even comes up on a list that you're invited to do that, and then once you get invited to a second interview, and you're going to have to get face to face sooner or later. But each one of these teams, is different, and it'd be fascinating to hear, the questions that each one of the different teams are asking. Look, there's 32 of these things. There's 32 of them. I interviewed for 3 of them during my coaching career. Was successful in the interview process of being named to 2 of them. But each one of them, I can just tell you personally from my experience, each one of them was different. It was different, but they were all very thorough. But everybody has a little different way of running their franchise, and so that's why it's important to get in front of the principals that are going to make the decision, and ultimately it's going to be the principal owner that makes the decision at all these clubs. So they all have their different views of the way things are going to happen, and they're all set up differently. So to me, it's pretty fascinating right now but what I do like is that more coaches are getting a chance at least to get themselves out in front of franchises because of the way they're doing it with Zoom early on. They've canvassed a lot of people here and everywhere else right now in this process.
Coach, when you would go through those interview processes, what was top of the list for you as far as what you needed to know, your priorities and boxes you needed checked to know for sure if that was going to be a right fit for you?
Well, to me, it was meeting the people and sitting down and just because they were not only the people that are interviewing you are not only getting a feel for you, you're getting a feel for them too. And so I went into all of these interviews with my eyes wide open as far as just trying to get a real feel, because at the end of the day it's a people business. But when you start looking at it. And look, it's evolved, since I've done it to this point. This is a huge, huge enterprise now. It's a huge enterprise. Everybody has assets. I'm talking about clubs. Everybody has assets. And the way it's set up now with free agency and the salary cap, if you're not good, you can get good again pretty quickly if you're surrounded yourself with the right people and your ideas mesh with the people that you're interviewing with. So that's what I wanted to know. When I was in there. And the other thing that's really important, you can come in there with all the PowerPoints and all the graphs and stand up there and start spewing out things to people. But the thing that you've got to get a feel for and you've got to know is you cannot be phony in these things, because people that own clubs, people that the owners surround themselves with in these front offices, they know, and it's just like in a locker room. You can't be phony in these things, and you can't just say what you think that they want to hear, or what might sound good, or what might look good jumping off of a resume page. You've got to be yourself, and you've got to be genuine in there, and then you've got to feel a connection. That's what I always look for.
So how much of that legwork for you in preparing for those interviews had to do with the people in the building, who you'd be working with, ownership, general manager, and all of those things before you even got to the roster and the state of it and the work that had to be done there and your vision for it?
Well, I tried as much as I could. Of course, look, I had an advantage, guys. When I interviewed for my first head job in the league, I'd been in the league for 10 years. I'd been in the league for, so I knew. just like now. I've been in it for going on 39 years. I know most everybody in the league at some level or another, and so it's important. But even if you don't know somebody very, very well, you can get to know them if you're very honest and open when the dialogue starts. If you don't do a lot of just, empty wordplay when you're talking with people in an interview that's just important, if you've got a good sense of who people are, it's pretty good. You can get to know them pretty quickly. But that was extremely important. But you ask around, you got to prepare.
Well, it's just that level of cost benefit analysis, Mac, where you have the benefit of a decade in the league before you get these opportunities to interview for a head coaching job, and you feel infinitely more prepared as a result of just who you are, how comfortable you are in what you do, and everything else, where I'm looking at a lot of these candidates, and to your point, the process has been made more available to so many others because of the level of these virtual interviews before we get to in-person stuff on the 22nd. But I also wonder how many people are just at the point where they are prepared for these opportunities at 36, 37 years old, having been coordinators for a couple of years at a time and stuff like that. It's just an interesting kind of dynamic to compare and contrast.
Yeah, and you know what, though, Buck, it's very, very important. If you get a chance to interview, you always take an interview, because that experience alone, I mean, it's just like anything else. You cannot manufacture experience in anything that you do. And if you have in your thought process that at some point you would like to be able to elevate your career in this league as a coach to the highest point that you can get, you need experience in these things. So that is one thing you always, regardless of whether you've been in the league 1 year or 12 years, you get a chance to interview, because you never know if you don't get it, what you might glean from it that might help you get the next one.
He's the main man, Coach Dave McGinnis. He's out there whipping around in the snow because his Two Rivers Ford Explorer lets him get out and get among the people, because, Coach Matt, you can't keep a good man down, and he's got things to do. Coach, always appreciate it. Have a great Friday and enjoy the rest of your weekend, brother.
Guys, always enjoy visiting with you. Stay warm. See you.
It's the main man, Coach Dave McGinnis. I had people comment, Coach Mack and I drive the same car, and that Mac is very comfortable out here whipping around. It's not that I'm uncomfortable driving in the snow. It's just, who likes driving in the snow? Aren't you over it by now?
Yes, but got to give a shout out to the Tennessee Department of Transportation, because I think they have done a great job downtown and on the interstates. I have not had a lot of issues on the main roads, Korean Vets and Shelby and going over the bridge and all of those things. My street in East Nashville by my house is an ice rink. But once I get off of there, and I've seen snow plows plugging along all week, so shout out to those people.
Yes, actually, because a lot of shout out to the TDOT people and to our mail and Amazon delivery people that listen to us.
That don't get the benefit of those massive giant trucks with tires that are as tall as you and I.
No. So we just know, because a lot of you listen to us throughout the course of your workday. We're very, very appreciative of all of you, especially those of you who have had to bring the rest of us essential goods because we're either incapable or too scared to drive out in the elements to go get our own stuff.
Well, speak for yourself.
I am. I actually am. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. Friday Fire. Bring your submissions. That's next. We are going to continue the vetting process for the Titans head coaching candidates in the noon hour. Going to take a look at a guy that I think there's a lot of question marks around, for Titans fans at least. There's probably a few on the list of 11 that they've put together. Thomas Brown, the former, I guess current Panthers offensive coordinator, who did interview yesterday virtually for the Titans head coaching position. We will vet him for you at noon. Meanwhile, Friday Fire, please.
Buck Rising is one of the least positive people on the planet. So to combat that, we've installed a new segment where he's forced to be positive. Sponsored by Central Barbecue. This is Friday Fire.
Because it's Friday, you ain't got no job, and you ain't got shit to do.
The only thing you got to do is get the best barbecue in Middle Tennessee. That's Central Barbecue. They make Friday Fire possible. EatCBQ.com for lunch, dinner, or your catering needs. Central Barbecue in Hillsboro Village has you covered. It is, Bert is correct in saying that I'm one of the least positive people around, but it's hard for me to not have a smile.
Man, Flow Rider just couldn't stay away. All right, calm down, Flow
Back
Rider.
in the box.
Yeah.
I just imagine the radio audience when your hand slips on one of those pots back there, that the audience just imagines you like fighting with the Flow Rider music to try and put it back in a box somewhere. Get back in there. Or the press conference music. Anytime Rick Ross posts on social media, it makes me smile. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, Lucas, when I brought to you the clip of Rick Ross getting his first bull for his farm of livestock and him unloading that off the trailer and just the joy that overcame that man. Well, this is a different kind of joy because he's apparently a doomsday prepper, but this social media post on Instagram also put a big smile on my face.
I was conversation with one of my homies, and he said, what's one of the boss's moves that you pulling off? And I said, matter of fact, I haven't said this yet, but I want to give a salute to Caterpillar. We breaking ground. I'm excavating. It's going down. Y'all know how I love real estate, and I usually like to build and go up. We going underground now. One time for all my doomsday preppers. Elon Musk, I see you. I saw your ground plans. I'm impressed, but guess what? My bunker gonna have a garage. My bunker gonna have wings. Huh? Yeah, we breaking ground. Huge excavations. You gotta have your fluids. I got a water maker, a machine that makes water out of H2O. I got a water maker. We got our canned goods. So if you're thinking the brothers ain't ready, we ready.
I just love him. I love him so much. I also want to go to Rick Ross's bunker with a garage, wings, and a machine that makes water out of H2O.
I love the shout out to Caterpillar, the construction company.
No, not you. More than you like one time for all my doomsday preppers?
Yeah.
Come on.
Who is going to have a better bunker than Rick Ross?
Elon Musk, maybe.
Man who enjoys the lavish things in life.
Like
turning H2O into water. That's so great.
Like there's a full Wingstop in Rick Ross's bunker. Yes?
Like Devontae Adams having a Taco Bell in his house in those commercials.
It's just anytime he does something on social media, he makes me smile. Rick Ross, Friday Fire.
That's a good one. That is a good one. Yeah, when Doomsday comes around, let's all head down. He lives in Miami, correct? Doesn't he live in Miami?
He spends a lot of time in Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. I think his place was just recently broken into. Do you understand? It is crazy to me, the number of notifications I get from TMZ, because they break a lot of sports news too, about how many celebrities' homes get broken into on a regular basis. Is this just because these people have like multiple properties and these giant mega mansions are just vacant for, weeks, sometimes months on end, that you've planned your strategy to go break into Rick Ross's Atlanta mansion? It's crazy to me.
Did you ever read about the Bling Ring? You remember the Bling Ring?
No.
That group of teenagers in L.A. that went around just breaking into celebrities' homes?
No.
I mean, stole thousands and they made a movie out of it with Emma Watson starring.
What?
Yeah, absolutely. Like broke into Paris Hilton. And they found that so many of these celebrity mansions around Hollywood and Beverly Hills were just unlocked. Like they're just climbing walls and just opening unlocked doors.
People just forgot.
Because Paris Hilton's, in Ibiza or something, and they'd steal thousands of dollars worth of jewelry, and they all got caught. I mean, reality shows came out of it. Like, a bunch of those kids got famous because of it. But yeah, look into the bling ring.
Tough to be a famous thief.
It's the movie is just called The Bling Ring. But my Friday Fire goes to Bills fans. I just love a truly loyal fan base. A fan base that just bands together in the worst of situations, and that it seems like truly all they want in life is to see their football team succeed. That's what Bills fans are. And maybe it's because I'm a college football lifer and I try so hard to draw those parallels with NFL fan bases, and there's so few you can do it with.
Buffalo
right?
is one.
Buffalo is 100% one. Saints, I think, has that feel in New Orleans. The Packers certainly has that sort of cult following feel to that franchise. But Bills fans that are once again going to heed the call when the franchise asks them to come shovel snow out of Highmark Stadium, the way they did last weekend, they're offering $20 an hour to fans to come and literally shovel snow for hours for there to be A, playing surface, and B, places for fans to sit, for Highmark Stadium not to be underneath a giant pile of snow. They're asking for it again for the upcoming game against the Kansas City Chiefs this weekend in the divisional round. That game slated for Sunday night. It'll wrap up the 4 games. They did it for the wild card matchup against Pittsburgh. My hat tip to the fans of Buffalo for showing up to make sure that there's going to be a football game at Highmark Stadium this week.
It's true. It's just, I know this is a positivity segment, but I could not help but feel terrible for our buddy Cam Wolf of the NFL Network. Do you follow Cam on Instagram?
No.
Oh my God. Lucas, he just got home less than 2 days ago from Buffalo, the first time from the Steelers game. He was sent to Buffalo to cover the Pittsburgh Steelers Buffalo Bills playoff game. He could not get back to Miami until 44 hours ago, where again this morning he boarded a plane to go to
Buffalo. Oh, no, he's going right back.
6 days he was stuck in Buffalo.
So the high, it's gonna stop snowing. It's snowing today in Buffalo.
I know, but I like if I'm Cam Wolf's boss at the NFL Network, like you gotta send somebody else. Send James Palmer. Don't send me back to Buffalo. My God.
The high on Saturday is 18. The high on Sunday for the game is 26 in Buffalo.
It's warmer in Buffalo than it is here. The hell.
It's crazy. We have gotten more snow in Nashville than either New York City or Philadelphia so far this year.
What is it? We're currently in an El Nino cycle, right? I've been watching the Weather Channel app a lot more lately.
Like the high in Buffalo Sunday is 26. The high in Nashville Sunday is 29.
I don't love that. Not a fan. Although it is funny to me how many of you are out there using your either apartment complex pools, or your own personal pools as your ice plunge for the day. By the way, what is this? This sourdough bread baking is all that's on my Instagram, and people doing ice plunges now as a part of the trend. Like, I understand that it's good for you. I do the cryo chamber stuff, but I'm not dunking myself in a freezing cold pool in 9 degrees.
Don't question the algorithm, man. Your phone knows more about you than you do.
You people are concerning to me. Anyway, vetting Thomas Brown as the next Titans head coach. We'll do so next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. On Thursday, the Titans completed their interview with Houston offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick and Carolina OC Thomas Brown for the head coaching vacancy. Former Stanford coach David Shaw set to interview this weekend. That marks 11 coaches that the Titans have had an interview request for in this cycle. Former Titans coach Mike Vrabel completed his first interview on Thursday in L.A. with the Chargers. The Falcons and Seahawks also reportedly have interest in Vrabel, although Adam Schefter reporting that the Falcons seem to be honing in on Bill Belichick. College basketball on Saturday, 6th-ranked Tennessee hosting Alabama, who is undefeated in SEC play. That's a 1 p.m. tip. You can listen live to the Vol Network call right here on The Zone. And the NFL Divisional round kicks off Saturday afternoon. The Houston Texans at the Baltimore Ravens at 3:30, followed by Packers at 49ers in the NFC. On Sunday, the Bucs visit the Lions. It's a 2 p.m. kickoff. The Bills host the Chiefs for a spot in the AFC Championship at 5:30. Tune in to all the Westwood One coverage of the NFL playoffs right here on The Zone. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is already here on this Friday. Vibes are high. Thanks for hanging out. Hope you're having a great end of your week. We'll see if we can't get you there a little bit faster. Final hour, we are going to vet Thomas Brown, the Panthers offensive coordinator. He is virtually interviewed for the Titans job yesterday. He is one of 11 candidates that has been requested to be interviewed by this particular franchise, who is in search of its next head coach to replace Mike Vrabel. How do you feel about, are you coming out with candidates that you favor more than another? Or do you have candidates that you have significantly more questions about than others on the list of 11? 615-737-1045 is how you can join the discussion. Be curious to hear your feedback. It is made more difficult because we don't have access to the interviews. So you're basically taking these guys' sample size, body of work, without really knowing their personalities, without getting to engage with them, without seeing them engage with others, really, and trying to make a determination about who you like more than the other. But it is still fun, I think. I've enjoyed what Lucas has done in helping us go through the vetting process for our own purposes on the air. So what do we have on the Panthers offensive coordinator, Thomas Brown, bud?
Well, we put it to a poll this morning. Who is your least favorite Titans coaching candidate so far in the process? Thomas Brown is a name that's going to pop up very often. And it's obviously because of his affiliation with the Carolina Panthers. So before we run through his path to the NFL and his background, and we hear a little bit from Thomas Brown on his coaching philosophy, let me go ahead and tell you right now. Rand Carthon and Amy Adams Strunk and Titans brass did not gather into a room, flip on tape of the Carolina Panthers in 2023 and say, that's what we want. It's not what went down. There's more to the background of Thomas Brown. 37 years old, Georgia native. Do you remember his college football career?
I remember him at Georgia,
yes,
running back.
Really good player at Georgia. Battled injuries throughout his career, but a very good running back. Also a kick returner, set the school record at Georgia with a 99-yard kickoff return against Tennessee in 2006 in a game that Tennessee won. I feel like I have to say that. 6th-round pick of the Falcons in 2008. Didn't really have much of an NFL career. Out of the league in 2 years. Injuries had a heavy hand in that. But his first coaching job is as a strength and conditioning GA at Georgia in 2011 under Mark Richt. He's hired as the running backs coach at UTC in 2012. This kicked off a very impressive resume in coaching the running back position for Thomas Brown, a former running back himself. He bounced around college football, was the running back coach at Wisconsin, at Marshall, and then arrived in Georgia in 2015. His resume of running backs he has coached includes Melvin Gordon in a record-setting season at Wisconsin, Sony Michel, Nick Chubb, Rico Dowdle in his time at South Carolina at 2019, who's now an NFL player.
He was a fun dude that I feel like, I mean, obviously different to go from college to pros, but like I really enjoyed watching his college career. I thought he was going to do more at the next level.
Well, he's found a nice little groove in the NFL. Travis Homer, Gus Edwards. It is a really impressive list of running backs that Brown has worked with. He's hired as the offensive coordinator at the U at Miami in 2016. He's there through 2018. And then he gets to the NFL when he's hired by Sean McVay in 2020 to be the Rams running back coach. Rises through the ranks very quickly in Los Angeles. He is the associate head coach in 2021, obviously the Super Bowl winning season for the LA Rams. He adds the tight end coach tag in 2022. We've talked about this on this show, and look no further than here as an example. The impact that tight end coaches have from an overall game planning perspective and how often tight ends coaches have been elevated to offensive coordinator here in Tennessee, like Arthur Smith and Todd Downing. So don't overlook the fact that he got that tight end coach tag added to his title also as the associate head coach in LA.
I'm blanking on, oh my God, I'm blanking on the name of the tight ends coach. Tony Dews.
Tony Dews, yes.
Tony Dews
went
moving from running backs
coach
to tight ends coach this year.
Yeah. Panthers offensive coordinator in 2023. So he's hired by Frank Reich. And look, Reich brings him in kind of trying to marry that McVay offense with his own scheme. Initially, Frank Reich is calling the plays. He hands it down to Thomas Brown. He takes it back from Thomas Brown. It didn't work, right?
Messy.
The roster is terrible. I mean, Reich is fired at the end of the season.
Apparently, coaches undermining actively Frank Reich, working to kind of like there was all. Do you not remember this report from Diana? This Hunger Games atmosphere that was reported on with the Panthers organization after Reich's firing. This was in the middle of the season. This is why he's the most interesting candidate on the list to me, because he does have a very impressive resume for somebody who's as young as he is. And it's not irrelevant that he was the assistant head coach for the Rams in their Super Bowl winning season. All right. He's thought of very, very highly there, but that he is also a part of this Hunger Games atmosphere that was being reported on by Diana around the Carolina Panthers makes me wonder, okay, whose side were you on? What was your level of involvement? These are the questions that, just as Mike Vrabel's going to get them from whomever he's asking about the level of roster control and, did you bite off more than you could chew, big fella? I want to know from Thomas Brown. All right, which character are you in the Hunger Games? Because this is very much going to determine how we move forward with this interview.
I mean, how much is Mike Vrabel fielding questions like that?
Right? Only once so far based on the interviews, but I'm sure it will come up in every interview that he has. But this is different, Lucas. This was Mike making a play for more control than he was contractually owed is one thing. That's not Hunger Games. People texting the owner behind Frank Reich's back, jockeying for position and stuff like that, as was reported by Diana, that is a much different level of bad atmosphere that I want to know a lot more about and from Thomas Brown if I'm interviewing.
It was a mess. Everything about the Carolina Panthers, a complete and utter mess in 2023. He's going to have that association. It's going to be a negative mark.
Sure.
For certain that he will have to work through in the interview process. Steve Weish joined the show earlier this week. Steve Weish and his co-host, James Palmer, on the NFL Report on NFL Network, sat down with Brown around the midway point of last season talking about his play calling, game planning process. Here's a little bit from a Titans coaching candidate.
Well, one, I've always been a sponge. So have an opportunity to, like you mentioned before, be in an environment with so many great minds around us. But the kind of one-on-one time with Frank every single day, we kind of put together our game plan to talk about certain ideas. Obviously leaning on guys like Coach Caldwell as well, who can kind of obviously add advice from his vast experience from a behind-the-scenes standpoint. But I think it's about the daily collaboration and me understanding more about him and kind of vice versa in combination with putting our players in the best spot to have success week in and week out.
Tom, I'm fascinated by play callers. I love when guys say they're so much in the zone, they're not even looking at the sheet, right? They're just calling it. But everybody kind of has a different description of it, right? Some guys say it's a science. Some guys say it's an art. Some guys say it's a feel. How would you describe play calling?
I think the biggest part of it is about preparation. So obviously being able to have a feel on game day is important. being able to adapt and adjust depending on what the opponent is giving you is going to be a big part of you having success on game day. But it's about what are you doing throughout the week, putting the game from a game plan standpoint, how you bring it to life, but more importantly, how you explain those details to your players. Because ultimately, it all boils down to not how smart you claim to be or want to be as a play caller, but how smart are your players, what those guys can activate on game day.
Ding, 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 ding.
I hate that we've taken just a completely normal word in collaboration as this buzzword now that we raise our eyebrows. There it is.
Both of us.
There it is. He said it. A perfect
Hire
fit.
him.
Yeah.
Hire him right now.
But pros and cons. Been on the fast track, right? He's only been in the NFL for 4 years.
It is crazy how thorough and how deep that resume is. Again, this is somebody who is very much respected. When he is a part, think about it this way, okay? Within the context of the Carolina Panthers coaching staff. Whatever David Tepper is as an owner, he told Frank Reich before the season, you worry about putting together the best possible coaching staff. Not guys you know you can work with comfortably. The best possible coaching staff, and we will worry about the compensation after the fact. This is what makes the Carolina experiment so weird in 2023. It was supposed to be a super team of coaches under Frank Reich. Thomas Brown is a part of that. Like in the same way that Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator, is very, very well regarded. Like they have a lot of highly regarded people on that staff. It's just went nuclear in Carolina, and it didn't work out the way that, a lot of times when you put together these super teams in professional sports, sometimes they fall short. This one just came to a catastrophic end.
Was the associate head coach for a Super Bowl, part of that McVay coaching tree, elite running back resume. It's fun to think about what he could do and the ways he would utilize Tyjae Spears. Cons, lack of head coaching experience, like most of these candidates. No quarterback background, right?
Matters.
Never been a QB coach, never, I'm not going to say never worked a game plan around a quarterback. I don't know that. I don't know what those conversations were like, how much of an impact he had
but his
on
area
Bryce Young's
of
development.
expertise is not quarterback.
No, it's the running back position, without question. Former running back himself. And obviously a tough sell to fans with that Panthers connection. But don't let his experience with the Carolina Panthers completely color what you think of Thomas Brown as a candidate. And with these coaches out of the McVay and Shanahan coaching tree, you hire these guys, you got to take swings, right? He falls under that category of, is he going to be a head coach, good head coach? I have no idea. We have no idea.
But he's going to get hired by somebody.
Somebody's going to take us. He's on a trajectory.
Somebody's going to hire him.
That somebody's going to take a swing on Thomas Brown as the next guy to come out of that Sean McVay coaching tree.
It's the same. I mean, Vrabel wasn't like one of these. He wasn't McVay or LaFleur or any of that. But Vrabel was next-gen coaching, kind of. He was in his early 40s when he got his first gig here. He was very much viewed as fast-tracked with the way that he came up. Somebody's going to take a chance on these guys. We could talk about it coming up next. The most interesting storyline of the divisional round as well. How do you view these Titans coaching candidates? Let me not mix these words up. Hard for me with the day off, Lucas. I don't know why I'm struggling so badly. Anyway, I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. I'm going to take a look at some of the most interesting storylines of the divisional round here in just a moment. There was I'm going to call it a news-adjacent item yesterday on 3HL. I mean, it got turned into news. Maybe it's just an absence of news here locally around the Tennessee Titans. But Zach Pillar, former Titans offensive lineman, of course, on those great teams, one of Blaine's teammates, and Wycheck and Eddie and Steve McNair, the whole crew. He was on 3HL yesterday. Now, I haven't heard the clip myself, but they were talking about the Titans and the state of the Titans offensive line, and that obviously being a big talking point for everybody for the better part of 2 years, and how coaching factors into that. And Zach Pillar said that Mike Munchak would very much like to come home. Like living in Nashville would be open to coaching and would be happy to be a part of the Titans coaching staff again. Now, that's consequential because Mike Munchak is viewed as one of the best offensive line coaches in football currently, especially as guys have kind of aged out of that. The Patriots offensive line coach forever, Jeff Stoutland in Philadelphia, is somebody who's also very, very widely regarded as the best O-line coach in the league. That was something that was talked about under Mike Vrabel. Would he ever consider bringing back somebody like Mike Munchak? And I remember Corey Curtis, I can't remember if he came on the radio show, Lucas, or if this was one of the 615 sessions that I did with Corey, basically saying that Munchak was not going to come back and coach for Vrabel because, Mike has a particular type of, for lack of a better term, yes man type of situation that Munchak didn't really fit the mold of. That's secondhand. That's not anything that I had heard specifically, other than it had been brought up a couple of times, the idea of Munchak coming back here. Why wouldn't he? And he did take some time off from coaching to be with family and stuff like that, as coaches do from time to time. And I believe he has grandkids now, so that's not inconsequential to all this. But after a while, football coaches get restless, and they want to do the thing that they know how to do, which is coach football. I would love to hear how somebody like Mike Munchak, who is regarded as of a different time of football, kind of fits in to a philosophical evolution that the Titans might experience. Because you can still coach offensive line coming from a different era of football to fit the modern age. It's not like Mike Munchak wasn't just in the league, 3 years ago, coaching offensive line?
He last was coaching with the Denver Broncos, 2021.
3 years ago. You got to make the call, right? You got to see what he's doing. You got to see how actually interested he is. If this, again, Zach Pillar is the sourcing on this, and I'm sure Zach and Munchak and guys from that era keep in touch on a regular basis. You got to at least call him and find out. That dude, there are not a lot of position coaches, I think, that are regarded as truly making a difference for the positions that they coach. There are dudes who have moved around, done a couple of different positions. Well, for example, Tony Dews, we just talked about him in the last segment, moved from running backs to tight ends coach. One, because Tony played the position of tight end and has experience, but two, because it helps put you in position to take the next step, to become a coordinator, to become a head coach and stuff like that. Some dudes are just career position coaches. And Munchak, while he has been a head coach and been in several different spots, stuff like that, that dude is a career offensive line coach.
And you're about to have, theoretically, let's say the Titans take a left tackle in the top 10, a rookie starting at left tackle, a second-year player starting at left guard. Can you do something with Nicholas Petit-Frere to make him a reliable right tackle? And then, obviously, you got to fill some spots at center and right guard. We have no idea what that's going to look like.
Well, that's the other part of this. You have to salvage what's there.
Exactly.
Radens and NPF in some form or fashion. Can you get anything out of them?
That are still in a young phase of their career. 100%. You need somebody that can mold that group.
Although, think about this. Dylan Radins is getting ready to go into his contract year. This is fourth year. He's a second-round pick. How quickly that just went by without, and I'm not going to say without meaningful contributions because he obviously played a ton this year, but man, that is a really, really tough draft class to look back at.
If the Titans can start next season with either Mike Munchak or Bill Callahan coaching the offensive line,
you would feel a lot better about even if you're not certain about the players that are there, you would at least feel like you have a fighting chance.
You wouldn't have a question about the person leading that unit, right? And Jason Hoteling may turn out to be a great offensive line coach and have a great career, but he's an unknown.
Nebraska Matt says, Bill, ? Yes, Brian is the son. Brian is the offensive coordinator of the Bengals. Bill Callahan is a legendary figure, specifically as an offensive line coach, but as a longtime coach in the NFL, Bill Callahan is as well regarded as anybody.
Did a great job with the Browns group this year. That was banged up all season.
They lost both their tackles for a period of time. They were fighting uphill all year long. And Cleveland has some really talented players like Joel Bitonio and is it Posich, their center? They've got some highly drafted players that were still starting along that offensive line in the way that the Titans do not have, other than Skoronski.
Matt is asking because he says, not in Nebraska. And he's got the Nebraska logo on the F&M Bank chat.
Yeah.
Bill Callahan was Bo Pelini's predecessor at Nebraska.
That did not go well. But as an offensive line coach, got you covered. So, most interesting storylines in the divisional round. Is it just Detroit? Is everybody who doesn't have a team still in the playoffs pulling for the Detroit Lions to win the Super Bowl? That's basically what I'm left with.
I said this yesterday. Nobody has more of that team of destiny feel, whatever that's worth, than the Detroit Lions.
So just kind of looking at the bracket, the remaining 8 that will face off in divisional weekend this week, because we've talked precious little actual football, it feels like. Texans and Ravens, Packers and Niners, those are the Saturday games. Bucks at the Lions, indoors. Not outdoors for the Tampa Bay media that seems to be unfamiliar. And the nightcap of Chiefs, Bills in Highmark in Buffalo, not at Arrowhead for the first time of Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen's career, which is crazy. I saw Ed Oliver, the defensive tackle, the Bills defensive tackle, quoted as saying, I basically feel like Arrowhead's a home game. They've played there so much in the last couple of years between postseason and regular season. Chiefs-Bills is the marquee. Lions are the team that America feels like it's pulling for. Ravens-Texans has the biggest, I think, question mark around it. These teams have already played. It was week 1, so it's tough to really extrapolate any kind of meaning from that week 1 game to a place that we find ourselves 19 weeks later in an NFL season. And obviously the Ravens getting the better of the Texans in that game by a substantial margin with C.J. Stroud's first start, all this kind of stuff. There was a couple of regular season matchups in this collection. How scared is Robert of C.J. Stroud? How scared is he of DeMeco Ryans and not overwhelmingly like star-studded defensive front, but a good defensive front with a good scheme that's made them better? How scared is Bert?
It's always so hard to tell where he is on the spectrum of being terrified with the BRS setting in, because he always is. He's always on this consistent path of imagining the worst-case scenario. So I don't know if he is scared because it's C.J. Stroud, who has been unflappable and unshaken in his rookie year, and that Texans offensive line that were able to largely nullify one of the best fronts in the NFL against Cleveland last weekend, going up again against one of the best fronts in the NFL in Baltimore, who led the league in sacks. Those don't seem to be the reasons that Robert is afraid of what might happen in Baltimore on Saturday, because I think he is just generally. I think this could be the Steelers scrapping and clawing their way into Baltimore, and he'd be terrified at the prospect of losing at home to their division rival in the playoffs. BRS, real thing with Robert Walsh.
They're the number 1 overall seed. Mark Andrews looks like he's going to be available. The tight end who's missed a significant amount of time this year.
Marlon Humphrey is not.
That is of note. Ravens defense is not, like I said, you can't name a bunch of Ravens defensive players, but collectively they are the best group in several of the statistics and categories that matter. In fact, I think, Lucas, you had the stat earlier this week about them being the first defense in NFL history to allow the fewest points per game, to allow, there was a couple of different categories that they were across the board number one in, and it's like there hasn't been that many defenses, if any, defense to do that. I can't remember all the categories.
The first team in NFL history to lead the league defensively in points per game, sacks, and turnovers forced.
Okay. So, no small thing. Texans don't turn the ball over, which is something that we talked about with them going against the Cleveland Browns. The turnover differential for Cleveland had been horrendous all year long. They'd only won the turnover battle in a game 3 times that season. Of course, Joe Flacco, interceptions, 2 pick sixes in the game against the Texans was not their ultimate downfall, but it just helped exacerbate the issue. Ravens should win. If everything that we know about football is so, the Ravens should win. But that should have been the case when the Titans win. Mm-hmm. I was there for that game. I was as shocked sitting in a press box as every Ravens. I'm telling you, I have never seen, other than Titans fans after that Bengals game, I don't know that I've seen a more just shell-shocked audience than was that Ravens crowd after the Titans got a lead up and just really never relented. Lamar had damn near 500 yards of total offense himself in that game, and that was before we saw this best version that we've seen so far of Lamar. So maybe it's different this time around, but a couple of fourth down stops, an interception by KB, and 2 quick touchdown passes to Khalif and Jonnu, and that was one of the more stunning results of the NFL season that year.
How much might this game, Texans at Ravens, color the way fans come back to us next week talking about 2 coaching candidates the Titans have interviewed, Slowick and McDonald?
Slowick versus McDonald is the matchup that probably the most Titans fans are keyed into this weekend in the divisional round, because those are the 2 people, other than both lines coordinators, those are the 2 people that you're most focused on at this point.
Like, if Mike McDonald finds ways to scheme up pressure and affect C.J. Stroud in the pocket, something the Ravens have been excellent at all season, being one of the lower blitz rate teams in the NFL, and the Ravens, kind of shut him down a little bit, and it's, 31-10 or something like that. Are we coming back next week saying, all right, don't want Slowick? Good on that guy. Does that nullify his entire resume before that, the way it seems to have with candidates like Dan Quinn and...
Oh, yeah, it will for fans.
And what happened over Wild Card Weekend?
You know the answer to that question. Yes, of course.
It's just so ridiculous to me. That one game. I get the what have you done for me lately, but...
It shouldn't be ridiculous to you. You've been doing this for 3 years.
I know.
Come on.
Also, may I add, Buck, of the 8 teams remaining in the NFL playoffs, how many are led by head coaches with that offensive coordinator, play-calling guru background?
Packers, Niners, Chiefs.
That's it. That's the list.
3 of the 8.
DeMeco Ryans, defensive coach. John Harbaugh, special teams guy.
Mm-hmm.
Todd Bowles, defensive coach. Dan Campbell, just coach. I think just coach. Like, I get he was a tight end, but I don't think we put a tag on Dan Campbell.
Meathead in chief.
Yeah. And Sean McDermott.
I need to stop calling people like Dan Campbell and Mike Vrabel meatheads, because they are highly intelligent individuals.
Far smarter than you and I.
Of course, they're just big, hulking, crazy people that you and because of the amount of neck veins and how much caffeine they're drinking on a regular basis and the amount of substances that fuel them, you immediately default to meathead. Dan Campbell is actually a very, very well thought out, nuanced individual who clearly understands how to lead. But yeah. That is an interesting note.
It seems like a virtual guarantee Ben Johnson is going to get a head coaching opportunity. How Dan Campbell, in turn, responds and where he turns for his next offensive coordinator is going to be really interesting.
Sure.
To keep that momentum going in Detroit. Maybe having to replace both coordinators.
Ask Nick Sirianni how easy that is. He's having to present a plan for his job to the owner.
Yeah. And it's his offensive scheme.
That's right. And having to, again, maybe replace one of his offensive coordinators, right? Because Brian Johnson is interviewing not just here in Tennessee, but in a couple of different places.
And what you've seen in Buffalo, having Joe Brady in place as the quarterback's coach, somewhere to turn in-house where they let go of their OC mid-season, and now the Bills are playing some of their best football.
Well, again, that's being attributed to the change, and it's not insignificant, but Josh Allen is not turning the ball over down the stretch at a rate that he was at the start of the season. And maybe the offense is putting him in a position to turn the ball over less. That's not inconsequential, but I think that's such a skewed conversation in Buffalo. Anyway.
But of the teams that are left, who do you look at as fan bases are essentially already considering ex-coordinator gone?
Detroit.
But other than Detroit, Ben Johnson feels like a lock. Aaron Glenn we'll see, he's a candidate in a few places. But are we there with Baltimore? Are we there at the point where we say, Mike McDonald, there's no way he's back. He's going to be a head coach next year.
No, I don't think you can say that about really any of them other than Johnson because of how loaded feels like the wrong word, but it's a very saturated head coaching candidate market, right? Where it's not just new guys who are getting the first crack at this, but Vrabel, Belichick. Who else are we talking about in that kind of vet? I mean, Harbaugh for his part. David Shaw, who did interview last year for the Broncos job and now is starting to take interviews again, which is clearly indicative. And we talked about this when he was at Stanford, the idea of David Shaw in the NFL. Now he seems to be taking that opportunity more seriously. Tough to win at a place like Stanford, and they definitely did tail off at the tail end of his tenure. But still, it's as saturated as a coach of a coaching market as I can remember, top to bottom coordinators, former head coaches who have been coordinators, ousted head coaches who are pursuing other opportunities, and things of interim guys who are exploring those opportunities. It's pretty interesting to see. So Ben Johnson is the only one that feels like he's guaranteed gone, right? Robert was talking to me, speaking of his battered Raven syndrome, or however you want to call it, the idea of sneaking Mike McDonald under the radar because it's so top to bottom kind of interesting for all these teams, and we'll see how that stuff kind of works itself out in the in-person interview process starting next week.
Yeah, Robert's just hoping the Ravens sneak out of this carousel with both coordinators still in place.
Robert's hoping that the Ravens win, but the defense doesn't play well, that they win in a shootout. So that Mike McDonald has a black mark on his resume heading into in-person interviews. Be like, I don't know. That Slowick guy looks like he's got the better of Mike McDonald. Maybe we hire the Slowick guy instead. 615-737-1045. Last call for phone calls if you got them. If not, we'll update the polls. Get you over to Blaine and Mickey next. Wrapping up for the week. Thank you guys for hanging out with us through your snow week. Did kids go to school at all this week?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. We don't know, obviously. The two of us. We are blissfully removed from, having to balance work situations with having kids at home and stuff like that. But it's my understanding that I don't think kids in Davidson County went to school at all this week.
We were supposed to broadcast Green Hill versus Gallatin tonight. Some high school basketball on the zone. That is obviously not happening. So our next broadcast will be next Thursday, Brentwood Academy at Ensworth.
Remote learning is what's being submitted in the chat. A few places doing virtual learning. That just sounds like hell. You can't be accomplishing anything like that. It's like I never understood how they were doing that during the pandemic, because of course you're just going to check out on a Zoom call. Did you have an online class in college?
I took health online, just one of those basic freshman or sophomore requirements, whatever it was. I'm so thankful I graduated before COVID.
Yes.
I could never, ever have done a full semester of nothing but Zoom. No way.
Online classes started to be a thing my last year of college. 2015 is when Indiana started to allow for online classes. And I remember taking one for the first time and being like, this is so stupid. Why would anybody pay money for this? I'm totally fine with it because I'm going to do well, and this is going to be the easiest class that I've ever taken, just by nature of it being online and all the different resources that you have at your disposal. But I didn't understand how a licensed university could allow for something like that.
I wouldn't be good at working from home. Even in college, I liked to get up and walk to class. I like to have somewhere to get up and go to every day.
UW says it's been a rough week for One Buck Rising. It's only been I had a bad day yesterday. Rest of the week was fine. Lucas had a worse week for me than me having to make up for me on Monday and yesterday. But that's why Lucas is good at what he does.
Now, Monday, I gave you the 3-hour silent treatment. And then Thursday,
you
Robert and I
talk
had
about
a great
that,
time.
You pouting on Monday? Because I understand I left you high and dry with 15 minutes notice. But also, pouting during the show is not the best way to do the show, even if you're pissed at me.
Now, you called me 10 minutes before air, and I'm not going to make it. And I'm just picturing you walking out and looking at your car once and then turning around and going inside.
It's so true. You were allowed to be pissed at me on Monday. That was fair. The only person that you punished, though, was the audience. 3 hours of me monologuing. It was fine. That didn't bother me at all. It's 3 hours of fastest radio I've done. Just, okay, sit down and talk. I got it. Oh, my goodness. Tyler says the Buck Rising Show had a great Thursday. That's right. Quickly, before polls. So there's a story out there from several different outlets that Sports Illustrated is again getting gutted. Now, Lucas said this to me during the commercial break and said that we've already done the eulogy for Sports Illustrated once.
I considered it dead when Maven took over initially, and it turned into it just took that total departure away from journalism when it was one of the best journalistic institutions we had in sports.
Now, to people's credit who still work at Sports Illustrated, they're trying. Those of them who are career journalists and stuff like that, they're trying. We have two guys who are working for the Titans SI site right now. I think it's just called All Titans or something like that. Tom Brew, and forgive me, I don't know the other gentleman's name. He actually just got here the last 2 weeks. It felt like of the regular season, but they were trying to do stuff. Tom was covering Indiana basketball and the Tennessee Titans football team for SI, having primarily covered Indiana and having graduates. Tom and I have talked about this a couple of different times, but doing both things, right? Trying to do the job, but only being allowed to do so much. And then there's this story today from Front Office Sports. The Arena Group, which I'll tell you in full disclosure, also publishes A to Z Sports.com, okay? So this is something like anything that I write or anything that any of my colleagues write at A to Z, and they're in all 32 markets now, is under the umbrella of the Arena Group. They also publish SI. They recently missed a $3.75 million payment to SI's license holder, a company called Authentic, which led Authentic to sever the deal between the Arena Group and Sports Illustrated. And today, Sports Illustrated employees were basically notified that if you're not laid off today, you will be in the very near future laid off. Staffers at Sports Illustrated, this is courtesy of Front Office Sports, staffers at Sports Illustrated were notified on Friday of massive layoffs, some immediately, others in short time. Authentic, as we mentioned, the licensing group that purchased Sports Illustrated for $110 million, which sounds like just pennies, doesn't it? For what Sports Illustrated is in the landscape and the influence that it had on so many people who both love sports and got into sports, journalism or otherwise, as people who just enjoy reading and writing. Like, it doesn't have to be sports, like journalism, generally. And I know I'm probably doing one of these media things where media guy talks too much about media business and gets too self-involved about media stuff. But, like, Sports Illustrated feels bigger than that, where you collected the covers, where those covers meant something to you. I know Titans fans still talk about the cover that featured Hainsworth and Curse and the Titans defensive line.
Vanden Bosch.
Yeah. As like these are seminal moments for sports fans that Sports Illustrated was a part of, and beyond just the great stories that were told there. On Friday, SI employees in an email, quote, "We were notified by Authentic Brands Group that the license under which the Arena Group operates the Sports Illustrated brand and SI-related properties has officially been revoked. As a result of this license revocation, we will be laying off staff that work on the SI brand." That I texted like Kaharski and Tehran and Rexroad in our group text, just asking if I was misreading that, because to me it reads like they're just folding Sports Illustrated. Or at least until another time as somebody buys the rights to publish under the brand SI.
And then they would have to rehire, I suppose. They'd have to totally fill it back out.
Right. Because if you're missing payments, if this and I like I said, full disclosure, I publish stuff under the Arena Group. I have no idea anything about the Arena Group. Those conversations are had above my head at A to Z, and I don't know the details on that. But if you're telling me that they missed a $3.75 million payment to just keep SI afloat, then the natural reaction is, okay, mass layoffs everywhere, and that's coming at the detriment of people who are either starting out in the business or are hanging on in the business, and SI being like this version of SI being like the last vestiges of newspaper reporting and stuff like that. It's awful. It's really awful. Anyway, bad vibes to end on. I'm sorry. Polls, please.
And now, the polls have to be updated. We've reached a crucial point in the show. It's time to update the polls. Take my hand, get to the chopper. Lucas Panzica will give us the final update. Why am I yelling? It's giving me a headache, but it's only a headache. It's not a tumor. Hasta la vista, baby. I'll be back. Why am I yelling?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford that will get you through this ice and snow. But do be careful out there. Who is your least favorite Titans coaching candidate to this point? Scoob says Dan Quinn. Rick says, I was at first not happy with Quinn. Then I sat back, and I remember a guy who was the OC of San Diego and became a 3-time Super Bowl champ. Quinn took the Falcons to the Super Bowl. Belichick was fired with the Browns, and look what happened when you get the right players. Blizzy says he doesn't like Dan Quinn. Karen says it's David Shaw. AB says it's Mike Kafka. Most of the answers list Dan Quinn as their least favorite, and I think that's where I would fall.
Because he's done it. He's didn't have success. It fell apart pretty quickly after he lost Shanahan. I was laughing in the middle of you reading that because we were talking about kids being out of school. Jimmy Jam 702 tweets us and says, my kid's been out of school so long his favorite color is 3. Made me laugh.
What's the most positive story you've seen in sports this week? Goody says that the Bills are 5-0 when they sacrifice someone to the pit that was created for the new stadium. I did not vet that tweet before I read it.
Okay, very good. Excellent work by you. Ron Burgundy?
David says Lions fans who cried tears of joy after the win. With a link and an emotional Lions fan. It is cool, man. It's cool. Like, if you don't have anything against Detroit, then how can you not look at what's happening in Detroit right now and just sit back and say, okay, like, you got to be happy for those fans.
Imagine being a Detroit sports fan where the Pistons lost 28 in a row this season. I think the losing streak ended at 28.
It doesn't mean, like, if you're a Packer fan, like an NFC North fan, and that's your
Even
rival.
then, the Lions haven't threatened them ever.
Sure. But if that's your rival, then do your thing. But elsewhere, if you've got no stakes against the Lions, how can you not be happy for them?
No, you root for the Lions this week.
What would be the best fit for Mike Vrabel? 43% say the Chargers. 43% also say the Seahawks. 14% say the Falcons. He's only interviewed in L.A. so far.
I think Atlanta is fascinating.
I think they're about to hire Belichick is what it might look like.
It sounds like it.
What is the most interesting storyline of the NFL divisional round? Karen says Pat Mahomes going on his first road playoff game. Toby says the transformation of the LOL Lions into a possible Super Bowl contender.
Do you think Belichick sells tickets in Atlanta?
I feel like it'll be mixed or be met with very mixed reviews. Like that's the guy that's going to fix our quarterback situation? Those are the polls.
They'll definitely run the football more. Blaine and Mickey going to keep you entertained on this Friday. I'm going to jump on with them later on in their first hour, so stick around.